being here. You might have expected to see Paul Galschutz's face, but he is experiencing his wife is having some health challenges, so he's prioritizing being with her and has asked me to stand in and facilitate in his stead. So I'm going to do my best. So for those of you who do not know me, my name is Dirk Labuschagne, and I am a chaplain at Rush University Medical Center and on the steering committee for this hospice palliative spiritual care research network. So I am glad to be here with all of you, and I would love to introduce Kate Piderman, who graciously has agreed to join us this morning. So Kate, for those of you who do not know, is a chaplain, board certified through the NACC, and a researcher who's worked in psychiatry, medical rehab, and hospice. Research has focused on several areas: patients' expectations of chaplains, the role of religion, spirituality in recovery from addiction and coping with cancer. And then a project, Hear My Voice, has focused on developing and testing a spiritual life review intervention for patients with advanced illness and their loved ones. She's one of the foremost chaplaincy researchers in the world. And we are so happy that you agreed to join us today, Kate. So remind us, I know that you've worked at Mayo for most of your career. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. I worked in Iowa for a little while, a few hospitals in there after I left my residency, but primarily at Mayo since 1996. And I retired from bedside chaplaincy in December of 17. But then because of COVID and the lack of volunteers and various restrictions, I'm back at the bedside, which I'm very much enjoying Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and I'll continue until they can get volunteers back. It's a need, it's a ministry, it's good for me, and I love it. Research, I am not doing anything new, but we're applying the Hear My Voice intervention in palliative care as a clinical trial. And so I'm helping with that and consulting on various things, and it's good life right now.
That's great. That's great. And thank you for that update. So the format that Paul recommended and that I'm going to follow, but I think we have some room to kind of veer off it, is for us to start by each of you to do an introduction, who you are, where you're working, and what a research interest of yours is. And then after we've done that, it sounds like we will kind of just have a conversation around that. So Kate, if you want to make comments based on the introductions, you're welcome to do so, but then we can go into kind of questions that the participants have for you, or just general conversation around research.
Yeah, that sounds just fine. And I'm expecting that this will be an informal give and take. I'm thinking about having coffee with all of you in a room. Wouldn't that be nice? Remember those days post or pre-COVID when we could actually gather together and talk to each other? But so let's try our best to make this coffee.
Great, that sounds great. Who'd like to go first?
I'll go first since I'm the last person to have entered the room.
Right.
My name is Nick Matchefs, and I am a new chaplain. I began my work in February of 2019. I work with Presbyterian Homes and Services in their Optage Hospice, which is a service arm of Presbyterian Homes. So I'm a hospice chaplain, and I do most of my work in Presbyterian homes, long-term care facilities, either care centers or assisted living facilities. And I haven't done any research other than reading research articles. I would love to do that. My interests are in reading about effective interventions in my area of practice, so hospice, palliative care. I have been quite interested in short-term life review, mostly because I don't know, I've never been trained in it. And so I'm eager to hear, Kate, your experiences and how to implement life review as a hospice chaplain. Most of my work is with people who suffer some form of dementia.
Thanks, Nick.
Yeah, so Dirk, do you want me to, shall we do maybe bigger continue around the room with introductions, and then I can go back. I'm making some notes, and
Yeah.
Nick, I'll be happy to talk about that. I could talk about that with you forever. And people with dementia, you know, they may have trouble reviewing their lives, but we've done some work with people with early dementia, mild cognitive impairment, and we've had a relative or someone to support them that kind of prompts the memory that they have, and that is helpful. So I can talk more about that.
Yeah, that sounds great. Okay, I'll start naming some people since you're a little reluctant. Chuck, how about you go next?
Sure. It's easier if you call us out, because then we know who has and hasn't anyway. So Chuck Valentine, I'm a new chaplain as well, frankly. I'm a part of the Ascension larger team. I work with the Ascension On-Demand Spiritual Care team. So a year ago, my life kind of worked nicely with palliative care, but over the last 12 months, mostly my work has taken me into providing ambulatory care centered around a Medicare Advantage program that Ascension developed with Centene. Research interests really have gone toward assessment of spiritual needs, care planning for people, and it's, you know, kind of this very different world because I've got no hospital, no institution, no program. And how do you know which of these folks benefit from spiritual care, and what do we do once we've got them in our arms? And we are in the process of expanding that to called Smart Health, which is essentially our employee healthcare program, and providing spiritual care as a benefit there as well, coming alongside those who are in care management. That's the tie to palliative care in my mind, and that is identifying the contribution that spiritual care makes to the work of the larger team. And the straw that was just added to my back, how do we quantify, identify the efficacy of spiritual care within the work of the larger team, so that we can come back to our systems and say, see, what we're doing makes an actual contribution.
Yeah.
And I think there are some great parallels between palliative care and the work I'm doing. So I'm not really working in palliative care, but I think the analogies are strong.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you for what you do. And I'm reminded of I think it's a 1999 article that George Fischette was the second author on, called How to Measure a Sunbeam with a Ruler. So in the end, we are called to measure and quantify. It's really important for our profession. but it is so difficult. And then to figure out how to respond to the needs of the institution, the demands of the institution, plus to stay faithful to our call as chaplains. It's tricky, but there are ways to do it. So we can talk more about that as well. If we have 3 hours, do we have 3 hours?
We have a very limited 45 minutes left.
45 minutes. Okay, let's go get these introductions done. What states are you in, Nick and Chuck? What states of the Union?
Wisconsin here.
Wisconsin?
Minnesota.
Oh, hello. Okay.
Christine, would you like to go next?
Sure. I think last time I was here, I kind of share my interest. And I think one of the things that I'm just right now where I am, I'm struggling is having a community hospital that has a different satellite, but with one professional chaplain who has relied heavily on volunteers until COVID came. And so I'm trying to gather some data, I guess, to see the impact of chaplaincy in such a system, and maybe even to talk about, is there a consequence of not having enough chaplains in a system like this? I'm involved in pretty much everything that this hospital has to offer, which includes palliative care, hospice. Even though they have a hospice chaplain, once again, the hospice chaplain is also overwhelmed. And so one of the things that was talked about was being to measure what is not being done. And I was really excited to hear that you're at the Mayo Clinic, because one of the things that this hospital has is that they're actually one of the a hospital that is working in relation with Mayo Clinic to offer oncology services. And I'm just trying to understand, what are some of the tools that could be used to measure what is happening here and begin to see the impact of what is not being done.
Where are you, Christine?
I am in Connecticut,
Connecticut.
and I'm with the Middlesex Health.
Okay. Yeah, I can, again, these questions so far are huge, but yes, I absolutely can. I can tell you what we've done, which might guide you in how you want to proceed. So that, because we had to deal with that very issue. Okay.
Great. Thanks, Christine. Steve?
Yeah, hi everybody. Steve Drennan, OSF Healthcare Systems, stands for Order of St. Francis in Central Illinois. So I'm the Pastoral Care Program Manager for OSF's outpatient hospice and palliative care. We have 16 chaplains in 11 different regions. But I also collaborate with the inpatient side. As Dirk mentioned at the beginning of the call, our system is one of the systems testing the validity and reliability of the PC7 tool. So we are involved in that, and hopefully going to be kicking it off with getting actual patients on board in March. And that's Dirk knows that's what's going to happen, right, Dirk? All things building up to that, but additional, hopefully this is just going to be a kickstart of further research in our organization. There are some shifts going on, and basically the shifts of our leadership, and then that's going to involve how hospice and palliative care will look as well, and that's more to regional sections types of shifts of leadership. So that can affect how pastoral care is being delivered in palliative and hospice care then. And also we are building a cancer center. So that also is going to need to be staffed with pastoral care, deeply aligned in palliative and hospice. So there's just a lot of things. There's a lot of support from our system too. So from the ministry side, there is a lot of support for our pastoral care in all different service lines. So from inpatient, outpatient to specialties, So that is a good thing, and I don't see that stopping anytime soon, but it's about where we stand.
Steve, if you could study anything, what would you pick? Time and money not an issue. This is magic.
I have to get back to you on that one. Anything. I mean, ultimately, looking toward the ties with thanatology. So thanatologists, specialties that related to pastoral care, the depths of pastoral care provided within hospice and palliative settings. I think also the outcomes, patient outcomes, that related to pastoral care influences, especially in decision making. So that's one. Expound on my own studies, pastoral theology, philosophies for sure. So that's where my little head goes.
All right. Well, if it were in my power, I'd give you money and time for all those things.
And then
Have it.
is Brian on? Brian Sayre? I see him. I mean, I see that there's someone there, but I guess I haven't seen him or hear him.
He's
muted.
Muted. I don't know if he knows that. Okay.
Brian, when you hear us, or if you hear us, let us know, and we'd love to hear who you are and where you're working and what your interests are. Maybe you had to step away. So go ahead, Kate.
So it feels like there's a couple of issues here. And one is, what did we do in our spiritual legacy program pilot, Hear My Voice, that might be helpful to you? Particularly Nick is asking about that. And did articles get circulated? I'm not sure, because I can easily send them to Dirk or Andy for you. But there's a few that actually have our questions embedded in them. And those questions are yours to use. You just can't republish them. So they belong to the journal that we publish them with. They don't belong to Mayo. You can modify them. You can do whatever you want with them. But what I found as a chaplain, so I wear two hats, chaplain and researcher, is actually those questions were great for assessment. So the first one, and again, I think, Chuck, what you're looking for more is something to help you screen. And no,
we've got a screen in place. This is really assessing what is the spiritual need here.
Okay. So when I developed the questions, we started with the FICA from Christina Pachelski, and that's published over and over again. And she basically asks about faith and its importance, the importance of the community, and then what activity you would like. And I never used her questions specifically, but I found wherever I worked, those were handy things to know. Because if a person just say, can you tell me about your faith background? And someone says, well, I used to be Catholic, I'm not anymore. It gives you an entree. Is there, basically, is there anything more you want to tell me about that? Is there anything more you'd like to tell me that would help me care for you? I remember asking a man who was Muslim, what basically the activity question, and he wanted a prayer rug in his room. He was a psychiatric patient, and we were able to arrange that. He wanted to fast during Ramadan. It just wasn't going to work with his condition and his medication regime, so we had to adjust that. But those are great questions to start with. In the Hear My Voice project, and if you have more time with people, as we often do in hospice, you can get a little deeper. So who is the first person who taught you about your faith? You know, it was my mother. Well, how did she help you? How did she help you learn about your faith? You know, she sat me on her knee and she read me Bible stories. She sang to me at night, whatever it is. And those kinds of questions work whether a person is religious or whether they're agnostic, atheist, because you can just switch them a little bit and ask about values. We had a man on our hospice program who was, I guess he would say he was an agnostic, and his spirituality was so rooted in nature. He grew up near the Sequoia National Forest, and he loved those trees. And those spoke to him about transcendence. They spoke to him about peace. They spoke to him about regeneration, and gave him hope that there was life after this as he watched the sprouts, I don't know what their exact word is, come out of the trunks of the, you know, when a tree's been cut down, there'll be things that actually grow out of there. He was amazing. And as he dealt with his cancer and his pain, I was able to guide him back. You know, what would it be like if you were in the forest now? How would it feel? Oh, I would feel such peace. You know, can we just go there? Mm-hmm. So I think if you take a look at those questions, Andy, why don't I just send you the articles? I think you'll be able to be creative and find your own way with those. With people with dementia, again, we had someone else in the room with us, with me, say the interviewer, whoever that was. And then if a person was blank, they didn't have a response, we encouraged the person with them to, you know, kind of spur a question that might raise their memory. Does that help?
Yes.
Different than well, I can't say all other forms of life review, but than many, our project also asked about struggle. And I went back and forth with the two key mentors in my life about legacy. And one is Harvey Chachanoff, a Canadian physician, palliative care physician, also a psychiatrist. He didn't think we should ask about struggle. We had an interesting conversation because I said, Harvey, you're a psychiatrist. You ask all these hard questions. Why wouldn't we ask about struggle? But in the end, in my heart and soul, I knew that chaplains, whether we ask about struggle, we're told about struggle. And so I then talked to Dr. Piderman, Ken Piderman, who's written just tons of wonderful things. And he said, well, of course you'd ask about struggle. And we found basically two sets of responses to the struggle questions. One, a closed door, which we did not go in, and that was not the majority of people. And then we found an open door. Oh, let me tell you about this, this, and this. And that provided great healing, just amazing healing. We were not in that study about trying to prove the importance of chaplains or justify it. but we did use chaplains to do the interviews, suggesting that we might be doing it differently than a nurse or someone else. But there's another study afoot that's actually going to look into that. So anyway, enough from me about that. Are there questions related to the Hear My Voice intervention?
Well, I haven't read the intervention, so I'd be quite interested in seeing the articles so I could read about the intervention.
Sure.
I'm curious about, well, I'm really at the beginning of understanding life review. I know that life review is not simply going through a person's history, but involves assigning value and meaning to those elements. And what we do is facilitate people to do that. I'm curious about the outcomes. What outcomes does one see in this kind of intervention?
So there's two kinds of outcomes, and let me just back up a bit. The life review that we did in basically in an hour to an hour and a half with each person, and then it continued as we worked with them and revised what we had done to make a booklet for them to share with their family. But this was an expensive intervention. So for 130 people, but remember there's statistics behind it. It cost us about $250,000. So we got that in bits and pieces here and there, and you basically, for research, unless you're very wise, skilled, fortunate, you don't usually get a big lump sum. Some people do. I have not been, despite what Dirk said about me, I have not succeeded at that. But you can do it in bits and pieces at the bedside. I worked on the rehab unit for many years, and I worked one evening a week by choice because therapy was over. And maybe I would have 20 minutes with someone, and it wasn't really methodical, but I just would start the life review process and ask a question or two, not so much for my own information, but to help them remember and see what was helpful to them now. So the outcomes we found were certainly spiritual qualitative outcomes that came right out of the interview texts. And there's so much you can do with qualitative data, but then you do need all the money in the world. I mean, you can only pick a theme or two unless you have infinite money and infinite time. And we've done that. The other were quantitative outcomes, and we found an increase in, I'm doing this from memory, but spiritual well-being, overall quality of life, and emotional well-being in the patients who completed the study, and they were all getting sicker. So we didn't have a control group. So this is not fancy science with a randomized controlled trial. We just were trying to figure out if we could do this. But that those outcomes would be wonderful pilot data for someone else to do a randomized controlled trial if they wanted to. We decided, my goodness, it seems to work. Let's just do it clinically. So, okay. All right, anybody else about that study? Because am I right that we end at 11:45, Dirk?
No, I think it's till noon.
Okay, yep, that's what I have. So that's,
yeah, sorry, when I said 45 minutes, we were 15 minutes in. I think that's.
Oh,
maybe, yeah.
Anything else about that study or how it might fit with your work, your patients? And we've got some new people here. We have WMFT. Hello. Do you want to tell us about you and your interests in palliative care and research?
Hi, so I'm Sandra Casey. I'm at Trinity Health in, where am I? White Lake, Michigan. I've only been here a couple of months, but I was formerly at Avera, which is another Catholic institution in Minnesota, in Sioux
Welcome.
Falls, Iowa, South Dakota. I have many interests. Right now, I am working on a study for school. It is for palliative care, and it's looking at the relationship with discharge planning, spiritual care and discharge planning, and how spiritual care may be influential in more practical forms of care in palliative care. So, many times the social worker does the advanced planning and the discharge planning and all of that. And oftentimes, I know for myself, and as I kind of explored this with other chaplains, we are part of that also. And we are very much directly involved in the discharge planning and the, maybe not the formal steps to that, but the conversations with patients and with families quite often, because quite often that is one of the determining factors of quality of life for them. And so I'm just interested in finding out how many chaplains actually document it, because I have a strong feeling that we talk about it, but because it's not on any spiritual care assessment, or it's not something in some of the written notes that I've seen, is it in fact something that we do talk about or not? And I have an inkling that we do, but it's just not documented. And I don't know if, I think it could be possible that, and I don't know how this could be done, but I think it could be possible that we need to include more practical things on our assessment, or some place for that to be, or maybe, I don't know, chaplains just being more educated about that so that they are more aware to put that down, or some kind of vehicle as such. I don't know. So just interested in more of the practical side, as well as, because I know we do the spiritual and we know that, of course. And certainly other people do that as well, but it just seems, it's very discouraging to me, having been a chaplain for quite a number of years here, close to 20 years, that I don't feel like we're still fully included in the whole interdisciplinary process.
It's so complicated. I remember learning early on, data in means data out. So unless you're recording, as you say, at assessment, you're not going to get the data out that you want.
Yeah.
And so a key thing in any research that you start is your research question. And that is the proof of the pudding. That is how you will get pudding made, is if you have the right question. And that takes time. A mentor, early mentor of mine here at Mayo, an MD with a PhD from MIT, he would say, okay, just take a journal and write down every question you can imagine. That was, I was actually working on my doctoral dissertation then, and it was related to spirituality in people with alcoholism. And many of us know that spirituality is thought to promote good recovery. But I thought, so what is this nebulous word? What is it about spirituality that helps? So I had lists and lists of questions. And then he would say, okay, narrow them down to ones you can answer in your lifetime. So, then you get maybe 5 or 10. And then, we just hone the question. Now, there's 2 key things I will say from that. One is about the honing. Be sure you have your question that you want to answer. Be sure you're passionate about it. But also, I would recommend that you work with an interdisciplinary team. So Steve Alschuler, this mentor, was a psychiatrist, worked in addiction. And granted, in that case, there were just the 2 of us, but in other situations I've been in, there have been people from other professions, and they will help you hone the question. So I would, does that help you, Sandra, with
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. But start by dreaming about the questions you want to answer. That's why, Steve, I asked you that question. It's just a great question. What would I want to study? Our Hear My Voice question came out of my life in a back brace after a car accident and a broken back, and I was basically stabilized. But it came after wondering about years of chaplaincy and what would be most important for me to answer in whatever years I had ahead. So that's where that came from. I want to go back. Now, this is an old article. Well, it's not all that old, 2010, which feels pretty old now, but it's a patient expectation survey that we did at Mayo. And again, I can send that to Andy. It was multi-site. We did it first in Rochester, and then we did it at the 2 other primary Mayo sites, Arizona and Florida. And we took attributes that we thought chaplains provided, such as listening, being a sign of God's presence, supporting family, etc. And we mailed actually a survey to people upon discharge and then asked them to return the survey. The reason we did that was because at that point, we didn't need IRB approval to do that. So IRB approval is it's Institutional Review Board. It's its own nightmare. They want to keep patients safe. They want to keep you organized, but it really takes a lot of work. And it requires a consent often. We did not need a consent because we mailed. But in the end, we found that and these are the patients who responded. We don't know anything about the patients who didn't. But the reason people wanted to see a chaplain most was to be reminded of God's care and presence. And that's what they were looking for us to do. There wasn't a lot of diversity in that group, but there's all sorts of ways a person could build on or modify that study. So good research, the way I see it, provides a foundation for other creative people to go forward with their own ideas. George Fichette has been a mentor of mine and probably all of ours for a long time. He's done amazing things, but he is also humble and would say, take it and go forth and do something with it. You know, this is what we did, but what do you want to do? So I would encourage you to take a look at that. Christine, you mentioned the need to assess, and that also is expensive, but not nearly as expensive as Hear My Voice. I think it was maybe 20,000 it cost. And that was mostly statistics. The statisticians cost money. Here about over $100 an hour, which doesn't sound like much, maybe sounds like much, because we certainly don't make that, but it gets eaten up pretty quickly with meetings and stuff.
I think one of the challenges I have is that for a small community hospital, it has quite a reputation that precedes other hospitals. Just now, they were voted as one of the 100 best hospital in the country. Yes, so with that kind of reputation, it's hard to advocate for the need to improve that they feel like they could have done without. But yet, I wonder, there's a part of it that, because they have their own cancer center for outpatient work that I have yet to touch upon in any level. And I have known that there's a need there that we are missing, but yet they're able to float still.
Absolutely. And from our study, we were able to hire 6 new chaplains. So that was in a time when
there's it's a webinar.
At a time when people had money. I'm not sure that's the case today, but 6 is a lot. So I hope
I would settle for 1 per diem. Per diem if I can.
And it sounds exciting. You'd be a great person to work with. Maybe I'll just come and volunteer. I don't. Not today.
Thank you for that, though. That's a great compliment.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was going to say, you better take Katie up on that. That's a big offer there, Kate.
Okay, anybody? Let's see what else I got here. Yeah, those of you who are new, I would just say, get to know your people. Get to know your people, and the questions will emerge as you listen to them. What you want to study, in my view, needs to respond to your institution's needs, but also needs to respond to what our people need. And that may guide you. If you can do both at the same time, go for it. If you think quantitative research is too hard or too not up your alley, I'd say do it anyway. Get somebody who knows how to do it, because honestly, that's more of the research that gets published. And it's doctors, administrators are convinced by numbers, not by words.
I mean, I have something I just want to kind of run it by you, Kate, if that's okay.
Yeah, go.
Because I was thinking one of the things that I do have a way in is this whole new concern for diversity.
Yes,
And
huge.
there is a question about how is the system serving the people of a diverse background, especially the minority, and they're trying to gather data on it. And part of me wonder, if there's a way for me to interject about how maybe chaplain might have a way of speaking to some of these people who rarely fill out surveys, rarely give evaluation, also often has been, I guess, not really ignored, but unaddressed in some way, or that have been kind of not really reached out in more proactive way. And I guess I'm kind of wondering, that could be one of the maybe angle to go with about how to bring satisfaction with these people.
So important. So important. So I would applaud that. And Steve, you had a question. I can read it. One question that our organization added to our press granny patient satisfaction, did you experience the love? Oh, amazing. Isn't that a beautiful question?
Yeah, I just thought it related to when you were talking about the surveys you sent out as well after, and we actually received that question alone, a 98% satisfaction to all those who responded.
Wow.
It's really interesting. I mean, that's just a question tied in with what the healthcare system's already doing related to spiritual care, but they're all around care. There's potential for something like that to be researched more for sure. And that's tied into something the system's already doing. Just interesting example, I thought, to complement what you had said earlier.
It's great, Steve. And it reminds me that the Press Ganey survey, I expect many of you are using that or some sort of satisfaction survey. Boy, the way to convince administrators that you need chaplains is based on those surveys. So if you find out what questions are being asked about spiritual care in those satisfaction surveys, that's an entree for you. And if there aren't any being asked, then figure out a way to get them into those surveys. It's really, really important. Let's see, what else? Yeah, what have I missed in terms of, I'm thinking about Chuck's question with ambulatory care people. And boy, that's a whole new, so are you talking with them on the phone or are you meeting with them? What are you doing?
No, it's all virtual care. So, man, I mean, by experience, I'm finding they prefer television or telephone to any other kind of interface. What I'm processing on a couple of different levels is maybe one place to dip in is, you're wondering about asking about struggles. And for us, the assessment, we have a 3-question screen, works pretty well. It's based off of King's work. So, joy, meaning, hope, problems there, concerns religious or spiritual. And then we added a question about death simply because it's not being asked anywhere else. Do you have concerns about death or dying? And it gives us pretty good responsivity. But when we talk to the people, what we discover is while they have the struggles, nobody has asked them about the concurrent or complementing strengths. So my project now is basically kind of building off of the work that Dirk and others have done with the PC7, but to adapt the PC7 to this outpatient context with 5 realms and about 25 different struggles, and then complementary strengths. And this isn't an inventory, so we're not asking the people. It's really after you have done an initial intake, it's a structured reflection that you can use to assess what it is you've heard from that patient. And then from there, hopefully build meaningful care paths. So
it's beautiful. It reminds me when we were instituting EPIC as a charting format, whatever, at Mayo, and I was working for hospice. It was all pathology, spiritual pathology, if you can believe it. But and I advocated for strengths as well, because many of these people cope so well. They struggle, but they cope, and that's so important for a provider to know. So you're already using a research brain by saying, there's something missing here and we're going to add it and see what the outcome is. And you could add to that some sort of simple survey, what is your satisfaction with this phone call? Something. Did you feel heard? Did you feel understood? Was it helpful? Those research can be really complicated and it can be really simple.
Yeah, what the system is asking of us right now, so kind of the gold standard is, are you saving us money?
Uh-huh.
But then, the other question they're asking us, and I guess what I'm looking for are, again, analogous studies that I can adapt into this context, which would be essentially a single subject design. That is, and maybe it's using George's stuff with case studies. Can you narrate a patient experience in which you can show us where the spiritual intervention had a positive impact on the patient's outcome?
Yeah, I'm sure your hospital would love that. And they would also probably love more robust data that said, this number of people did not go back to the hospital or,
Right.
Avoided calling their doctor, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the case study is just so great and it's right up our alley. But I think also a bigger set of numbers is really what convinces administration.
Right. And we're building those numbers now.
There you go.
Steve, you always amaze me with the database that you've got available to you if there were a way to, kind of begin to tap into it.
Yeah. Anybody else? We've got about 5 minutes. Steve, you've probably got the most chaplains in your care area as anyone. How do you get data from that disparate group?
It's because they're in different regions, and again, the structuring of regions is restructuring now. It really has come up upon their initiatives. So, for example, we had one chaplain who said, "Hey, I want to start tracking the any kind of spiritual care that we provide to our own employees." So he put his own Excel sheet together and started tracking, saying this is how many who came in per week, per month, the types, even the levels of maybe distress that certain caregivers of our own, healthcare system go through, and that. So it's trying to show the value of pastoral care, not only among patient and family care, but then our own employees as well. And any way we can track it, if it's a simple just Excel sheet, we'll do that. We're talking now about utilizing it. We have like Microsoft Teams now within the whole system, putting that in a common Teams file area, or even a portals. We use our own portals so that anybody can access a file anywhere to add more data to. So types of spiritual assessments used, where the patient was seen and what service line, all those things. We pretty much, it's not that greatly organized. As I said, it varies in regions, but now it's becoming a little more organized so it's accessible to everyone in any service line. We're revamping the charting practice, so that helps as well, getting input from providers to say, what would you like to see in a chaplain's charting? So we're able to revamp that. COVID has delayed a lot of things, as all of us know, but I don't know if I answered your question there, probably too much. I got Irish blood, Kate. I'll keep talking all day. I'll stop.
You're great. No, I appreciate it. There's a few words that caught my attention, and one is tracking. So again, research that gets published it's sort of the top of, it's sort of the end point. But to start by tracking is really great. And that is research. You're just trying to make sense of your experience. So don't think, well, you can think big, but I encourage you to think small and ask a question, track, I love that word, and just pay attention to what you're finding and how you might be able to use that, to support spiritual care, more chaplains, to speak about our profession, to get it in hospital newsletters, to get it in the newspaper, wherever you want. It's just, you just start. And the other thing that is helpful about what Steve is saying is that it's a process, and you learn from the process. There isn't any magic. If your charting isn't helping you get to a certain point of understanding, then encourage your chaplains to chart in a certain way, by format, by template or something. And just, again, data in is data out.
That's great. Well, we're on the top of the hour. I'm going to honor Kate's time and everyone else's time, and thank you all for being present. Kate, thank you so much for your time and your wisdom and insight. It sounded like there might be a couple articles that we can kind of get back to everyone that were here. But yeah, just so appreciative for your time. And I think, Andy, so I know this is being recorded. Will it go back to the network? Is that right?
Yes, I'll post it on the network, and so that would be a link to our YouTube channel, and I'll send out, I'll send it out to folks as well. So
great.
And then if you want to be in touch with me by email, you're more than welcome. I'm pretty good with email, but certainly within a day or two, I'll get back to you if I can.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Okay.
See each other again.
everybody,
Thank you, Kate.
thanks.
You're
Kate.
welcome. Thank you all. This was fun. Take care.
Bye now.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.